On December 5th, 2006, Republican Congressman F. James Sessenbrenner of Wisconsin introduced the Border Protection, Anti-Terrorism, and Illegal Immigration Control Act, or H.R. 4437. The bill sought to criminalize violations of federal immigration law in the United States by requiring local authorities to hand over apprehended unauthorized immigrants to federal immigration agencies, classifying unauthorized entry and re-entry as an aggravated felony, authorizing local authorities to enforce immigration law and punishing states and municipalities who refuse to do so, mandating employers to electronically verify workers' legal status and levy stiffer financial penalties on those caught hiring unauthorized immigrants, and authorizing funding for up to 700 miles of double-layered fencing along the U.S.-Mexico border. The bill also threatened to criminalize anyone who assisted unauthorized immigrants, including those working for religious, humanitarian, or social justice organizations that might offer legal aid, social welfare, or sanctuary to people without proper documents. At the time Sensenbrenner introduced the bill, there was broad public support for anti-immigrant legislation. A May 2005 Fox News poll found that 91% of Americans believed unauthorized immigration was a, quote, serious problem, with two-thirds of those polled also favoring the U.S. military policing the southern border. That poll was substantiated by a CBS poll in October later that year that found 75% of respondents believed that the government was not doing enough to keep unauthorized immigrants out of the country. So on December 16, 2005, less than 2 weeks after being introduced to the floor, the House of Representatives passed H.R. 4437 by a vote of 239 to 182, with 92% of Republicans voting for it and 82% of Democrats voting against. A month later, on February 11th, the National Alliance for Human Rights, led by Professor Armando Navarro, convened over 500 Latina leaders from labor unions, churches, community-based organizations, advocacy groups, and universities at the University of California, Riverside, to plan a massive demonstration nationwide. The stated goal of the protest was to influence the debate over immigration in the spring, when the Senate was set to vote on H.R. 4437. That meeting served as the launching pad for the political miracle that came in the following months. On March 1st, Cardinal Mahoney of Los Angeles called on all priests from the 288 parishes in the Los Angeles Archdiocese to, quote, defy H.R. 4437 should it become law during his Ash Wednesday sermon, saying, quote, the whole concept of punishing people who serve immigrants is un-American. If you take this to its logical, ludicrous extreme, every person who comes up to receive Holy Communion, you have to ask them to show papers. It becomes absurd, and the church is not about to get into that. The church is here to serve people. We're not about to become immigration agents, end quote. A week later, after a rally organized by the National Capital Immigration Coalition drew a crowd of up to 40,000 people in Washington, D.C., Senator Hillary Rodham Clinton of New York came out against the bill in a letter to her constituents, saying, quote, the suggestion that enacting stricter and more enforceable deportation laws alone can solve this problem ignores reality. This will only force the undocumented deeper underground, end quote. Given that the senator was up for re-election, Clinton's denouncement of H.R. 4437 opened the door for other senators to follow. Later, on March 10th, over 100,000 people took to the streets of Chicago with the rallying cry of El Gigante Despierta. The massive crowd sent shockwaves across the political and media landscapes. Multiple news reports described the massive crowds as, quote, surprising and even, quote, shocking to the eye. Over the next 2 months, upwards of 260 separate demonstrations occurred across the country. 8 of these protests attracted at least 100,000 people. The largest of these marches occurred on May 1st, where more than 1 million people came out against H.R. 4437 in both Los Angeles and Chicago. The rallies took on a broader tone of social action as gay rights advocates, anti-war activists, and others joined the protests in solidarity. Immigrants' rights protests continued all throughout the summer and into the fall. The pressure ended up killing H.R. 4437 on the Senate floor. But the movement and coalitions forged in opposition to it lived on and became the base support network that helped pass the DREAM Act 5 years later and serves as the basis for the immigrants' rights activism that we see today. In the short span of 3 months, the movement against H.R. 4437 took millions of people out of the shadows and gave them a seat at the table, changing American politics forever.